joined live now by Indira, Dayang, Lacerna-Widmann, and she's going to talk to us today about her over 20-year effort to protect the Philippine cockatoo. Cockatoos are one of my favorite birds in the entire world. It's always nice to get to highlight such amazing species, and so I'm really excited to hear about Indira, about her work to really engage the community behind conservation. Again, this is a theme we've been covering all Global BioFest long, making sure that people all in the community, all sorts of stakeholders, businesses, governments, and more are invested in helping protect wildlife. So I'm really excited to hear from her. I hope you guys are too. And without further ado, Indira, thank you so much for joining us today. What a pleasure.
Hi, Jesse. Thank you very much. And thank you also for this opportunity to share our story.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you, and I'm excited to dive in. So if you want to bring up your presentation, let's go.
Okay.
Let's find out more.
So can you see that?
Not sharing on my end
Okay.
yet. The moment it's not up yet. The moment it does, it'll pop up for me on my screen. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's not popping up yet?
Not yet. This is half the fun. Video calls have to
I don't like that. Oh, for a while. Oh my God.
Well, while you're getting it up, I will say I love your scholarly background. You have more books than me, so we're slowly but surely.
That's the only available room for today.
There we go. So it's just come up for me now, and then once you got your PowerPoint up, it'll be all set.
Okay, is that it?
That's perfect. And if you wanted to press, there's a little bar on the bottom of your screen that says stop sharing and hide. If you want to press hide, that little bar will go away.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, no, it didn't do that.
No!
We're going to bring it back up, and we're not going to press that bar this time. We have to figure it out together, Indira. This is having fun.
No.
Perfect. You're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much again. So tonight in the Philippines, but today, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share to you the story about the Philippine cockatoo, its threats, and mainly on the strategies and what we are doing on the ground to save the species from extinction. So I'm Indira Dayang Lacerna-Widmann, and I work for the Katala Foundation and based here in the Philippines. I think we all know that most cockatoos are white, and also they vary in sizes. No, in most cases, our Philippine cockatoo is mistaken with all these cockatoos. Most are white and some are black. But what is distinct of our Philippine cockatoo is the red vents. Hence, it's sometimes called the red-vented cockatoo. So that's the story of the red-vented cockatoo. This is what I am trying to tell you this day. And maybe some of you might have forgotten where the Philippines is, yeah? So we are in the Southeast Asia, and I hope it's not only about COVID that you hear about the Philippines in the news, but I want to share with you that in the westernmost part of the Philippines, the one which is encircled, there is an island called Palawan. This is known as the beautiful beaches, where the beautiful beaches are, and ecotourism and everything about wildlife and biodiversity, Palawan. So I'd like to tell you why we are based in Palawan. So the Philippine cockatoo is listed already under the IUCN, or the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, as critically endangered. Yeah, so in 4 to 5 decades in the past, the Philippine cockatoo was widely distributed all over the Philippines. But as you can look here, and as you see in my slide, our recent global population estimate is not over 1,280 individuals in the wild. And as you can see in the map, the stronghold of that population is in the island province of Palawan. Hence, we are based here in the island of Palawan to work and conserve and protect the remnant population, wild populations of the Philippine cockatoo. So we work in 4 municipalities in Palawan, and in one municipality where there is a small coral island called Rasa Island, up to 50% of the 90%. So we have 1,280 individuals globally, and up to 90% of that global population could be found in Palawan. No? So this is the stronghold. And of that 90% of the population, up to 50% could be found in a very restricted small coral island where we started our program for the conservation of the Philippine cockatoo. And this is about only 8 square kilometers, that island of Rasa. So why is it endangered? In the past talks, I've heard so many similar threats all over the world, and I don't want you to take into each threat and be worried and be frustrated like I am every day of all these threats. I'd rather present a cloud presentation of all the threats of the Philippine cockatoo facing right now. And the bigger the the bigger the letters is also the greater the impact, the threat to the Philippine cockatoo. So as you can see, the lowland forest loss is the biggest threat of the Philippine cockatoo. There's poaching also, and climate change as well, loss of feeding habitat. And I tell you why lowland forests. In our studies for the past 20 years, we realized and we knew that the Philippine cockatoo is a lowland forest specialist. And what are these ecosystems in the lowland? So we have on the left side, for example, upper left, we have the mangrove. These are not only feeding grounds of the Philippine cockatoo, but they're also breeding ground of the Philippine cockatoo. So the mangroves, no, these are really coastal areas. And then we have on the right, upper right, we have also the coastal forest, beach forest, and feeding grounds of the Philippine cockatoo, and the riparian forest, the riverine forest, and lastly, the lowland dipterocarp forest. So when we have these lowland forests, what is the problem then? These are the ecosystems that are really accessible and very vulnerable and very easy to reach to everyone. So hence the we launched what we call the Philippine Cockatoo Conservation Program. And having said that, and having that in our and having these things in our mind, we realize that the the right approach for this conservation is really to be ecosystemic, meaning the whole habitat of the Philippine cockatoo we should be able to conserve, and not only the species. And looking at this picture, this portrait, we developed a poster and our conservation message that we bring to all target audiences and our beneficiaries, that the same conservation message, and that is to share a place to live. That the Philippine cockatoos and humans have more things in common than most people think, and we all uh, we all need the same resources in order to survive. So, for example, we are projecting here the habitats of the cockatoo, and then we are also explaining what is the humans' interconnection, what is our relation to that habitat, so that we can benefit, even if we use the Philippine cockatoo as a flagship species, as our flagship species. At the end of the day, with the conservation work you are doing, the humans are actually benefiting from it. And it's not only the humans, it's not also just the humans that are benefiting from it, but all the other wildlife and biodiversity that shares the habitat of the Philippine cockatoo. But what is key that I would like to share really today with you is what we call the wildlife warden scheme. This is where we have tapped poachers, meaning the ones who are really stealing the Philippine cockatoos from the wild, from their nest, and then selling them out. No, so these are the poachers we have here in Palawan. We work with 4 tribal communities here in Palawan, and with this scheme, we say like hitting 3 birds in one stone. But sometimes we have a bad connotation in that adage, so we go back to our childhood game of hitting 4 cans with one slipper. So for example, very very concrete for that, when you tap the poachers as to become the conservationist or your wildlife wardens, you remove immediately the immediate threat of poaching. Yeah, because they were the ones identified. In some cases here in Palawan, each nest tree is even carved with the name of the poacher. So it's really very territorial. So if you are able to identify the poachers and you're able to convince them to join the conservation work, then you are assured that the next breeding season would be saved. We will have a successful breeding season because your hatchlings are saved. Second, you provide them an alternative livelihood that's more stable than a seasonal income of for every breeding season. For example, every after June or July, when the hatchlings are right to be taken out of the nest, then they're able to get some money out of it. But when you are working as a wildlife warden, you are just you are insured of your incentive, not only during the breeding season but all throughout the year. And what is very positive about this strategy is that it's not the foundation anymore that's paying for the wildlife wardens, but this scheme has been institutionalized and adopted by the local governments we are working with. So they are part of the annual investment plan of the municipality. And I say kudos to the two municipalities which topped really in this strategy, and they are really putting in appropriating every year for the wildlife wardens that is working in our protected areas. And not only that, no, not only these two. Another important factor that you get out when you work with poachers and indigenous people, traditional people who have been engaged in poaching, is that you also gain their skills and knowledge, and there is tons of knowledge really that you get out from them, and I can share to you. And the last thing that is very positive about this strategy is that you instill pride among them. So they're not anymore against the law, but they are working for the protection of the, and they are part already of the solution and not the problem anymore. So the key to success is really indigenous knowledge. I was listening to the past speakers and who had also engaged with indigenous peoples, and I was really very surprised and I'm very inspired as well of the similar stories we have, no? So with the Philippine cockatoo, the skills are the knowledge that you get from these indigenous peoples are just so wide and big, and they are very helpful. You don't have to search anymore for the nest trees because they know where the nest trees are. You don't even have to worry anymore whether what is the timing of the breeding, meaning to say whether the nest tree is already occupied or not, whether the hatchling needs to be given supplemental feeding because it's not enough food in the crop, whether the hatchlings are attacked with mites, and what do we have to do inside the chamber to be able to address that threat. So all these things, and even where the where their food sources are, they also know, because they all have to know all these things to be able to raise a chick, for example, to raise a hatchling in order to sell them. So all these things. But apart from that, what's important is also, it's not Indira anymore climbing the tree, but it's really these people who are used to the traditional um, things, the traditional way of climbing by using only vines and rattan. So these are the only things that they, as you can see in the picture, some of the nest trees are 80 meters high, and with when you supply them with technology like the harnesses and everything, the more your heart pumps hard to see them climbing with all these high tech things. But with the traditional method, you feel so safe that they really can reach and check the hatchlings very well. So these things are very important for us. And when we engage the indigenous peoples and when we engage local partners, it's not only on these things, the nest protection, but as well in the conduct of the research. No, so it's not only the research on the ecology and the biology of the Philippine cockatoo is not done mainly by the researchers of the Katala Foundation, but really working together from the very start with the community. So they're engaged in population dynamics, they're engaged in phenological studies, they are the ones doing the monitoring the dispersal routes. They're also participating in our blood sampling, and they are taught how. And apart from that, they are also doing camera patrolling, which is very important. because we have created protected areas. They do all the patrols. And when we did the patrol at the first, we started with pen and paper, and then we shifted to some pen and paper because we at that time in 1998 when we started back then, we don't have the technology yet of smartphones. So we but the problem with IPs is that they don't know how to read and write. So we have to really be innovative and creative on how to make the reports in the patrol. But at this time, with technology in front of us, we are now on smartphones, and every person in, especially in the Philippines, knows how to operate a smartphone. So we have our own conservation model, and in that model, for example, when after every patrol or a month patrol, you have a report like this. You generate an information like this, and even the wardens would be surprised how much of walking, or how far they have walked in the protected area for that month, for example. And then you record everything: the threats, the birds, other cavity nesters, or what are your interests in that particular protected area. So these things are recorded and through the patrol system, which are done also by our wildlife wardens. So they are trained. When you are recruited as a wildlife wardens, you are trained, and then you are trained not only for patrolling but also on laws, because you are also deputized by our Department of Environment and Natural Resources to implement the law on environment. So that is a form of a citizen science, no? The participation and engagement of the poachers becoming wildlife wardens. But not only these particular stakeholders, but we are also capacitating ordinary citizens, housewives, living along a coast fronting, for example, our protected area. So we what the role is to count the cockatoos moving from the island to the mainland and back to the island every day. So when they have these baseline data, and when we were confronted with a development proposal to put up a coal plant just in front of our wildlife sanctuary, the community who owned and contributed to the data collection really thought that this will affect the Philippine cockatoo. So that was a very touching and very successful story for us to tell, that once you have engaged the community and they own the data themselves and they own the project themselves, they were not standing behind me to fight for this project, but also they were really in front fighting for it all. And we find very important also in the recovery of the cockatoo is that um, to have conservation education, and that conservation education for us has to promote pride. No? And we are using social marketing methods in order to do that, because we believe that pride is a powerful emotion that can create the passion for conservation. So there are several things that you can do together with the community, from the beginning, from the concept of what is really the problem, what is the issue, and why we have a low understanding of this and the ecosystems. We have to understand that from the very start. We have to thresh out from the community what is wrong and what is lacking, so that we can really direct our interventions to a certain behavior that we want to change, for example. So our conservation education activities in the Katala Foundation are measured, no? So we want to see the changes in the levels of knowledge, in the levels of attitude, and eventually the behavioral change, the desired behavior that we want them to have in order to support the conservation project. Another important thing is that you establish protected areas, because there are not enough protected areas. There are not enough habitats that are available, and if the remnant habitats are continuously plundered, so you have to establish protected areas and to help manage, no, to help manage these protected areas. As you can see here in my slide, the sizes of our protected areas are very small, from zero point 0.5 square kilometers to 39 square kilometers, and this is only about 0.5% of Palawan's land, small, but I want I want you to know that even how small your protected area is, and if you have done biodiversity assessment in that area, and this is the remnant forest patches that you have, and very fragmented, they still harbor the remaining populations of equally threatened in that area. So as you can see here, almost half of the threatened birds globally found could also be found in our protected areas declared for the Philippine cockatoo and the rest of the taxa. Of course, we did not include yet the vertebrates, the invertebrates in this area in this slide. So, if you have all these, the community participation, community engagement, but the very ultimate indicator is, are your species really increasing? Are your species really improving? That's the ultimate question. So when we started in 1998 in the pilots project site in Nara, where we had only when we started only with 23 to 25 birds, now we are close to 400 birds, 400 individuals of Philippine cockatoos, and this is what you can see at the roost site in that island. So when we started there in 1998, and we were told by the indigenous peoples that, no, ma'am, you see, it's really like white linens in the mangrove area. You see these cockatoos. And at that time, I wouldn't believe them. I would tell them, no, Tai, that's a joke. This is a small island. The carrying capacity of this island. No, believe me. And after many 20 years, we've seen it, and it's really very, they find themselves very proud that they're part of the conservation project. Because of the successes of the Philippine cockatoo and the strategies that we are doing and the tangible results that we have also applied the same strategies to four other flagship species we are running right now. So we have conservation programs for the Palawan forest turtle, we have conservation program for the Palawan pangolin, for the Calamian deer, and for the Palawan porcupine, all endemic species that are equally needing conservation and in high list in the conservation status. So, what are the lessons learned so far? I think it's very important that everything should be science based, evidence based. So when we want to have informed decisions, we should have a good baseline data. We are able to defend our decisions, and we are able to promote our advocacy. And then empower communities. Communities are very important, and we believe that no conservation project would prosper and would really be successful if communities are not part of the whole process. And when you have that already, that participation and engagement of the community, you cultivate that passion and commitment, because this is not going a conservation work for a species and for its habitat is not only good for 2 3 years or 5 years. It's really, you have to be ready for a long haul, because every day is a big challenge you are facing. And when you say you should be ready for a long haul, it's not only the commitment of the local participants, the local communities, and the local governments, and the local agencies and national agencies, but you should also be ready that you will have the long commitment of the funding sponsors that will be with you, that will stay with you in the long run, so that you can have a tangible result of your conservation program. So I think that is it, and thank you very much. Matamang salamat.
Indira, how incredibly inspiring, and it is passion like yours that keeps these incredible projects going for decades on end. So thank you so much for sharing all that. Sounds like you were hitting all the cans with one clipper, never mind just four. I'm so impressed and heartened. What a very cool story. I want to hear, honestly, as you may know from having watched some of our other programs, this festival is free for everyone to tune into. We are encouraging sponsorships and donations for some of the amazing conservation work. But I want to bring up on the screen PhilippineCockatoo.org if you want to find out more about Indira's amazing foundation, all the work they're doing. Check that out. Contribute if you can. It's a really special program. So,
Thank you very much, Jesse.
oh, I'm just sitting with my jaw on the floor, captivated the entire 20
Oh,
minutes.
it's worrying that I cannot see my face at all and how things are.
Kind of odd with virtual stuff sometimes, but no, we are as captivated as you are, and so thank you so much. I'm curious, you talked about the increasing population. You're already going from cockatoos to encompassing other species locally. Is there a benchmark of success? I mean, these are not huge islands, certainly in the case of Palawan. Is there a amount of cockatoos you're hoping to reach, or something where okay, we can breathe a little and have a little leeway, or?
The ultimate goal, of course, is to downlist the conservation status of the Philippine cockatoo from critically endangered to endangered. And to do that, you are able also to reintroduce the Philippine cockatoo within the historical range of the species. So meaning not from Palawan anymore, but also in the oceanic Philippines, you are able to bring back the Philippine cockatoo. So we are slowly doing that, and we are doing natural supplementation to the natural population. For example, in areas in Palawan where the recruitment is very low, for example. So we are doing that when we have rescued cockatoos and confiscated cockatoos that are good enough for bringing back to the wild, for release back to the wild. We are already doing that, and we are already at the stage of preparing a site in the oceanic Philippines where it was formerly found, and we are preparing that for reintroduction.
Unbelievable. Well, I have no doubt you will succeed. I look forward to reading the news broadcast in a couple of years and going, oh, that was Indira. She made that possible.
Thank you. I hope so.
Very cool. So one of the big focuses of your story was something that we've covered a bit, and I love this as a story in conservation, is working with poachers. Poachers, when I was a kid, when I thought of poachers, I thought of evil people doing evil things, and it's not that. It is people that are working to make a livelihood, and they happen to draw that livelihood off the land in a way that is unsustainable for the species there. And so your efforts have been so successful, sort of recruiting them to your cause. What's been one of the things that I've seen in National Geographic and other publications is former poachers talking about the pride that they take. And you highlighted this. Is there an individual story you can share of someone who used to take these animals and now works to protect them that is just,
a lot, Jesse. I can tell you a lot of these. I want to flex them all, but in 20 minutes time I cannot do that. And in fact, when BBC, for example, or National Geographic comes to our site, they are more experienced to be on camera right now than me. No, I mean this what do you call this? This portrait shots. Oh, there is one warden who's really very, very, very good at it, and because he has done that for many times already, with different, from national media, from international media, visiting the site, because our story is not about the tourism part, but it's really a conservation tourism. We are promoting that the story of the transformation of a poacher to become a wildlife warden. So I can tell you a lot of many, and I even have many volunteers along the coasts, for example, who are not paid in real big amounts, but they are there every day to count the birds, and they worry, like they are the mothers and really the real parents of the cockatoos, that the number of cockatoos flying from one island to the mainland and going back is not the same number. So they worry a lot about that. So that passion we wanted to contribute, we want to cultivate among community members.
You are succeeding in spades. That is such a nice thing to be able to see and to have that, those stories to share. So kudos to you. It's been such a pleasure getting the chance to meet you, hear your story, such amazing work, and what a beautiful part of our festival. So thank you so much, Indira, for your time.
Thank you very much, Jesse, for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Have a wonderful day, and keep up the fantastic work. Bye.